found we always coming up with different tools and strategies. There are three things I would recommend for people who are struggling with self-care and taking some time for themselves. One is take a bath. I'm not talking about a shower, right?
Yeah.
About a bath. There's something soothing.
Indulge yourself.
Indulge yourself. When you're in the bath, you're in the bath. And I know some people have like toddlers or whatever, and they can't. But if there's two parents in the house, one can watch the kids while you take a bath. Or if there's, or sometimes it doesn't have to be at night. You don't have to wait until after dinner. You can take a bath in the middle of the day. You can take a bath to start. You can wake up a half hour earlier, hour earlier, and take a bath. But really, the idea is whether you have to wake up a half hour earlier or go to bed a half hour after everybody else has gone to bed, is to ask yourself, where is the pocket of peace? Where is the pocket where I can kind of recharge and take time for myself? And sometimes, okay, maybe you might have to lose some sleep and because you got to wake up a half hour earlier to do that. But the point is, don't hit the snooze alarm in the morning. Wake up when you when you
about
wake
the
up.
time you spend.
Yeah,
for yourself.
absolutely. Yeah. And that, which brings me to the second part, which is sleep. Sleep is so valuable, and I bring up sleep because it's not as simple as saying go to bed and go to sleep. Really, it's finding those things that are eating away at your sleep. People aren't sleeping because they're on social media late at night, and that's a drug, and that just keeps you up.
Yeah.
They're gambling.
May I add to that? Especially in these times as well, where the trauma that we're seeing in the world is so easily accessible. We're seeing a larger outpouring of sort of, again, taking it back to race, but it's not just exclusive to race, but in terms of the context of this podcast, that's another thing, like trauma is being spread out now on social media. So larger volumes of people are experiencing some level of trauma through all the injustices we're seeing, all the clips of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, et cetera, et cetera. So especially in the case of Black people and the way, like you touched on earlier, the way we consume media, it's the simple things, right? Like the time we spend on social media. If we can cut down on that, like you said, being more intentional with our sleep, having more sleep, resting, being intentional about the time we spend to indulge ourselves, rather than always feeling like on the defense. Oh, I've got to speak up. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to post about my anger. I've got to post blah, blah, blah. No. Relax. There's only so much weight that you can carry. Focus on yourself. Take time to relax. Take time to get your sleep. So just if you look at it from that angle, I can really see the importance of what you're saying. So yeah, I just wanted to add that perspective, but yeah, I'll let you carry on.
No, yeah, I appreciate you're right because back in the day, they read about traumas that were happening in the world. They weren't watching it. There wasn't.
Yeah.
I was just reading John D. Rockefeller's book Titan, and they would read. That's how they got the news. And so they would read about a trauma once, and they're done. And now we're constantly being fed. And not only are we being fed through what we read, and then when we get on social media, now your friends and family are texting you videos of people going through traumas and tragedies and their transitions. And so we have to be careful what we're feeding our minds, because that stuff interferes with sleep. Eating late at night, it interferes with your sleep. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. And listen, I'm not perfect. There are nights where Instagram gets me. I'm like, you got me again, Instagram. I too long on this damn thing, and now I know you're a Christian guy, so I'm trying not to curse.
Hey, it's all right.
So. But so I'm not, nobody's perfect, right? Like I said, it's a mental health challenge that we all have in some form or fashion, and even eating late. I'm listen, I'm right up there with the late night, peanut butter jelly sandwich and ice
I know
cream
you
or,
Americans like your peanut
whatever.
butter and jelly, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That PB&J, man. It just listen. I'm 44, and every now and again, PB&J just makes me feel like a 9-year-old again.
Yeah.
That those nostalgia foods,
Mm,
as I like to call them. The PB&Js, the ice cream,
mm,
the donuts, those things I ate as a kid to kind of self-soothe.
mm.
And so when but yeah, when we talk about sleep, we have to think about what's eating away our sleep. Is it the late night eating? Is it binge watching TV? Do you really need to watch 5 episodes,
Mm.
Ozarks in one night? Can we watch one episode a night, spread it out? So making sure we're getting sleep, and then the third thing we have sleep, and then we had taking a bath. It used to seem like, but these are small things. And then the third thing, the major thing is, get outside, get outside, get outside, and really, if you can, get outside into a place where you can take in a panoramic view. There's a neuroscientist, Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford neuroscientist, and he talks about how when we take in panoramic views, long distance views, that it reduces our cortisol levels, right? It brings us calm and tranquil. That's why going to the beach is so soothing. It's not just about sand and water. Like I could bring sand and water in my home, and it's not going to make me feel relaxed. But when we go to the beach, we can see as far as the eye can see. That's why being on a boat, it feels so cool. That's why if you've ever been to a rooftop party where you can see the city, 360 around you, there's something cool, right? If that same party was on ground level, it wouldn't have the same vibe. But there's something about being above other things and seeing for a long distance that brings our cortisol levels down. And we don't need much time. We don't need much time in nature. We don't need much time in a tub. 20 minutes in a tub, 20 minutes taking in a panoramic view, going for a walk, taking 20 minutes before you go to sleep to just kind of wind down, right? A lot of people running around, doing stuff, turn off the lights and cleaning up, and then they just jump in bed. It's like, no, man, you gotta transition into bed. You gotta like, maybe do a little journaling before bed, or do some stretching, or just spend some time talking to your significant other, right? Just checking in with each other, like, hey, what are you looking forward to, or what made you laugh? Like me and my girl, we don't do this every night, but most nights we check in with each other with questions about, like, what are you looking forward to? What made you laugh today? What was the biggest challenge of your day? And what was the best part of your day? And we check in with each other, with those questions, just to see where we're at. And, did I miss anything? It's like, because you'd be surprised. You can live with someone all day, every day, and still have no clue as to what's going on in their life, as to what's going on in their internal world, right?
Because a lot of it is up here, right? A lot of what we go through, it's
right?
Not in the external. It's actually how we're processing it. And yeah, that's a really good point.
They're functioning one way, but they're processing it another way, right? It's almost like, that friend, the person, like when you're at a party and someone makes an awkward joke and you laugh, even though in your head you're like, what the heck? You know what I mean? So it gives us an opportunity to check in with each other, and also it builds trust, and it builds rapport, and it builds friendship and intimacy. But we have to create that space for each other. There are nights where I just want to go to sleep, but then I go, you know what? Let me check in with you. Like, what were your wins today? What excited you? What got you out of bed this morning? These types of questions, it's about asking more questions and better questions of each other, so that we remain curious, and can stay engaged versus acting out and trying to avoid or numb the pain or the boredom, right?
True.
That's
Yeah. Boredom is another thing.
the boredom. Everybody's talking about depression and anxiety, but boredom will destroy a relationship. It'll end friendships. It'll bring it'll catastrophize your dreams, right? So boredom is something that we have to stay on top of so that we can be productive and thrive.
What are your tips for dealing with boredom? Because I have a lot of friends who are just like, oh, I don't know what to do with my time. Whereas I think the thing about lockdown, I think is, I might be wrong, but it's like causing one of two extreme reactions. Either people are bored and they're just relaxing, doing nothing, or you've got the workaholics like me who are like, oh, okay, this is my opportunity to find everything I can possibly do to fill my time to, you know. And I think both are quite unhealthy. And even for me, I've had to be very conscious of how I deal with staying at home. And I'm even sometimes, if I can be perfectly honest, the podcast sometimes get in the way of the, the time I need to spend with myself, but also with, my family as well. So it's just, so it's I'm bit by bit, I'm getting there. So like with my podcast, I'm saying an hour max. I do a maximum of 2 interviews a week. Maybe I should just cut it down to 1, or maybe even go 1 week without it. And yeah, I'm like Saturday is my day where I want to cut down on my use of my laptop, and I'm still working on it. Like today, I didn't quite fit in the Scrabble game, but so I'm making progress, but it's still setting those goals and being intentional. So I kind of went off topic a little bit, but yeah.
No,
So
you were asking me like how to deal with the boredom, and so
yeah,
you were talking about workaholics and versus the people who just want to kick back. And there's
yeah.
the antidote. I like to think of things in terms of antidotes or remedies, right?
Mhm.
So for people who are workaholics, if you're a workaholic, you're a workaholic. You're type A. You got to go, 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 and that's just how you're built. And so we want to encourage that and stick with that. The antidote, though, so that you don't become overwhelmed and burn yourself out,
Yeah.
is to have one thing a day where you don't know what's going to happen, to make time for play. Whether that means just getting in your car, and the other day I just got in my car and I just drove around for a while, or you just go somewhere that you've never been before, whether it's a coffee shop or a bookstore. Just do something that you've never done before once every day, or do something that scares you, or make a big ask. Sometimes I ask for something that's 10x. Like if you want $5, ask for $50. Something that kind of excites you and gets you out of your comfort zone. But for the workaholics, the idea is that you do something novel every day, and especially go somewhere different, whether it's working. If you like to work at a different coffee shop every day for a week. If you're going to podcast, different times or different locations or whatever, anything you can do to find a way to mix it up. That's really what it's about, because you're going to work no matter where you are. But it's like, how do you make it a little bit exciting, a little bit different for you, so that you're adding context and layers, and it makes it exciting for you versus it becoming work for you. For people who just want to kick back and do nothing, then kick back and do nothing. That's great. However, pick one thing a day that you want to get done, and then be done. If you want to Netflix and chill for the rest of the day, then Netflix and chill. But say, hey, every day, here's my goal. I'm going to do just at least this one thing, whether it's getting in 10,000 steps, in the morning, and then you're going to lay on the couch for the rest of the day. Great.
Yeah.
Whether it's write a page for your book. Great. If you're going to send out 10 emails today, and then you do that, done. So find the one thing a day so that you can go, all right, I got something done, versus doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because we know that in people who are struggling with mental health, part of there's a type of thinking called the all or nothing thinking,
Mm.
That thinking where either I'm all in or I'm all out.
Yeah.
And, and media teaches us that, right? It's like either you're with me or you're against me. Don't be half-assing. And it's like, listen, there is room for gray, right? There's a middle area.
Yeah.
There's nuances, there's subtleties. And so some people are an all-in type of person. Some people are all out. But most of us don't exist there. Most of us live somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
right? Right. It's that bell curve, right? There's a few outliers, but most of us are in that 85%. And so don't deny yourself that. And there's nothing wrong with that because we need the whole bell in order for everyone to function, right? So if you're that person who does have that all or nothing thinking, to know that like this is the best way to be an outlier. This is the best way to be all in on something I'm all in. However, I do need to mix this up a little bit every day and have something novel to keep me going. If I'm all out, okay, but I do need to do one thing a day to make me feel productive, right?
Yeah.
It could be showering. For some people, just take a shower. Just take a shower and shave and lather up and put some lotion on, clip your toenails, whatever that thing is. It doesn't have to be anything major. Make some rosemary bread, pick one thing a day that just kind of breaks it up for you. And, the other thing is just a little off topic in terms of just dealing with this quarantine is to make sure that you have some things that you only do Monday through Friday. And then there are things that you don't do on the weekends. So for instance, like you could do the podcast Monday through Friday, the weekends, no podcast, or the weekends could be editing. Like you could record during the week and edit on it, whatever you want to do, right? Mix it up so that your brain doesn't feel like it's Groundhog's Day. But the other thing, you could even do that with TV, right? Like me and my girl, we watch TV shows during the week, but then we watch movies on a weekend. So then, it gives us a sense of time and space versus watching the same thing every day. And then you're just like, what day is this? Is it Tuesday? So finding a way to break up the week from the weekend, and that could be in how you dress. I'm going to dress like this Monday through Friday, dress like that on the weekends. But there's so many practical ways that we can help someone navigate this quarantine and during these times.
Yeah, thanks for those practical tips. And I'm definitely learning just as much as anyone else. So I'll take note of that. I think the bigger message of what you were talking about is scheduling, but obviously not in a OCD sort of way, but just putting in a structure where you're saying, this is the time I have for myself. This is the time I do something new. This is the time where I'm not working, and just organizing time. So I think that's the next step for me, just to, it's one thing to do a plan, but then sticking to it, that's another thing as well. And kind of, it says we have to be done in 10 minutes.
That's for me, yeah.
Okay, cool. No problem. Thanks for that. So yeah, I'll work on that in terms of scheduling and sticking to the schedule plan. I guess the last main thing I want to talk about is, and obviously we might have to need another episode for this in terms of kind of the Black American experience of mental health versus the Black British one and the similarities and differences, which we can do another time. But I want to just talk about, again, we've been very practical throughout this conversation, and I want to kind of hone in back again onto what you've seen amongst Black people, probably more specifically in America and the people that you've mentored. What would you want to see more in Black communities, particularly Black Western communities, in terms of how we support each other in talking about our mental health and just, maybe there might be some crossover with what you mentioned already, but the kind of things you'd want to see moving forward, what sort of organizations or things would you want to see more involved? I have my own views on what the Black church can do to support this. But yeah, any other sort of communal spaces or organizations you want to see do a better job in facilitating conversations on mental health? Yeah.
To me, I feel like it. I'm so glad you brought up the church. I wasn't even really thinking. On my mind, as I said, is always thinking about education,
Yeah.
and I think that the school system is starting to do a better job of talking about mental health.
That's good.
Now, what I see a lot of schools doing are they have these emotion charts, like
Mm,
a feeling wheel. So when students come in, they point to whatever emotion that they're feeling
mm,
as they enter the classroom, whether they're feeling happy, excited, joyful, or disgusted, or hurt, whatever it is, so that the teacher then knows where the kid is starting at. So I
mm,
think that's a great beginning and a great start.
definitely.
However, I think we can do a better job of being aware of how culture plays into our perception of mental health.
Yeah.
Uh, because you're British. Where are your parents from?
Ghana. We're
Ghana.
Ghanaians.
So
Yeah.
so my mom's from Belize. My dad is from Alabama. I did the 23andMe, so I have a percentage of Nigerian in my blood. I'm like 35 or 38% Nigerian. And so these are all very gregarious.
Mm,
My grandfather is Scottish.
wow.
And so, all that combines to make me a very gregarious person. Sometimes I'm soft spoken, I'm articulate, and then other times I'm loud and crazy. Uh, and that can be perceived so many different ways in the mental health field, right? And so we have to be we have to do a better job of understanding cultural influences, religious influences,
Yeah.
understanding context for a person's behavior. Was this person abused as a kid? Were they abused and adopted? Were they abused, adopted, and Latin? Because certain cultures we speak with our hands, and we
Yeah.
speak a little louder. We're not this quiet, eat with this fork, and how was your day? Like, no, like we turn up.
Yeah.
Like we don't sit down and have dinner. We have a feast. Like, so now you're asking me in a clinical setting to sit there
Mm,
and be polite and have this very polite, cordial conversation. So you're asking me not to show up as who I am, right? And so and until the mental health field can learn how to accept the person in front of them and understand them from their perspective, and that that's what they train them to do, but not really with the understanding of the cultural influences and understanding what kind of household you grew up. They
mm,
talk about birth order and age and things like that, but there's so many cultural influences. Did you eat today? That's a question. How did you sleep last night? Like
yeah.
all these different things affect how someone is presenting themselves
Yeah.
to you. So I think that we as a culture
Mm,
have to ask ourselves more questions and also become more accepting of each other, right? Because even amongst Black people,
mm,
there are I don't want to call them striations, but
mm,
there are separations, there are divisions, right?
mm.
There's like I forget what they call. It's a group of bougie Black people. Oh, I'm about to get some tweets for this one. I forget, but like man, I wish I could remember the name of them. But
It's
where
not.
they
It's
they
not.
just
Is it?
bougie.
It's something else.
They just bougie, and then you got the street thugs, you
Yeah.
got the corporate thugs, you have the Cornell West, like, so we come in different flavors and different styles and all that, and but we can all sit down and share and talk with each other and appreciate what you got. Southern Blacks and Northern Blacks, and
Mm,
it's like we have to. I think what we generally have to do is get better at telling our stories. The
yeah.
S where it starts. If it breaks down to anything, and I'm just talking off the top of my head, but I realize that's what it. Listen, if I met you, out on the streets there, Nathan,
Mm.
You know, I would connect with you
Mm.
because I see you're black, I'm black, and I'm like, oh, it's a brother. What's up, brother? So we have a similar story, right? We understand on some. I'm like, that's a black man. I'm a black man. All right, so I understand that we're gonna have some things in common. And then I hear you speak, right? I go, oh, he's British. Oh man, okay. I don't really know enough, I don't know a lot about that, but I have British brethren, and I've been to Britain, and Gina Yashere, I hang out. So I understand the British culture in terms of y'all have long lunches. You know, in America, we eat in 10 minutes. We eat standing up. You know, we're ready to go. We got work to do. But man, when I eat with my British people, man, it's like 3, 4 hours, especially the British Nigerians, man. I mean, they all day with the lunches.
Oh
It's
man, I tell
beyond
you.
a fiesta. So you see that like we connect off that, we bond off that
Yeah.
because of an understanding, but that's only because I know that story, right? And so now we feel more connected, and so I think we as Black people have to get better at telling our stories. And I think that's where it fundamentally begins, because otherwise, the New York Times is telling our story, CNN is telling our story, you know, Washington Post, the BBC, you know, shout out to the UK. See, but these corporate entities are how are you going to tell my story? So the question is, how do we get better at telling, and not just story of as Black people, but our personal story? That's, you know, one of the things with my podcast is, you know, I brought some race into it recently because of the climate, right, of the country and of the world right now. But for the most part, when I'm talking to people, I'm not so interested in how race. I just want to know tell me your story, because some people don't even process the world through race. My mom and my father, growing up, never talked to me about race. They only emphasized work and education. And it's not until like I got older that you know, like you said, you become a spokesperson for race, and you start having more of these conversations. So when people start telling their individual stories, then we stop making assumptions about each other, and then we stop having stereotypes, and then we become more curious, and we become more compassionate, and we want to hear, we want to listen versus you know, yelling at each other and talking but did you know, and blah blah blah. It's like, all right, but here's why I look at the world like this, and so getting better at telling our stories. That is
more nuanced stories as well. Not being afraid, like we touched on earlier. You know, again, it comes back to how much media we're consuming. The more media we consume, that is, I mean, it's one thing consuming media in general, but then if that media is also white controlled as well, we are feeding ourselves perceptions of how we should be telling our own story. So then we feel like we have to speak up about knife crime, or we have to speak about all these things that a lot of us really don't have real experience with. Like for me, I'm a church kid. I never knew the streets. I don't know anything about the streets or any. If you want to talk about church, I can talk about church. And even this short animated film I'm talking about, right, is based on a young Black man, but he's not obviously the stereotypical, you know, guy that we deal with. Like, you know, he's caught up some way in gang culture or whatnot. And recently, I'm debating this with the team that I'm working with. Is let's establish it in a church, like a church youth group. Thinking about the physical setting we could set this film in so that my target audience identifies with it. And I think it's a good message in terms of commentary on what the church can do to aid these conversations. But also, you know, it's just, it's my personal story. And I've felt a pressure a lot of the time to be like, if I be too personal in the way I tell this story, which is meant to be commentary on the broader Black British male experience, if I make it too specific, will it mean that many Black people disconnect from my story? But what I'm learning is that through me being unique and telling my story, other people can attach their individuality to it. And it's still a good thing because it's breaking down those stigmas and breaking down those generalizations. So even as from the perspective of a Black creator creating content, I also have to have the courage to say, let me tell my story. Let me not worry too much about trying to accurately portray all my other Black brothers and sisters, because in me just embracing my unique story, that will help the bigger issue of breaking down stereotypes. So I strongly resonate with what you just said. So yeah, that's really encouraged me moving forward with this animated film I'm working on. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. I appreciate giving me this time to be on your podcast. This is wonderful, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think we will have to do another episode as well, so that you can check up on my routine, my quarantine routine, and how I'm coping at home. But also, again, this is a great conversation we could have, you know, and I think we could go into stronger detail in kind of the comedy sketches you've done and through your podcast and the different content that you've made, how that's also helped you mentally and helped the mental health conversation. So we can arrange another day to continue.
Absolutely.
But thank you everyone for listening to this conversation. Leo Flowers, can you tell us where people can find your socials and watch your content, etc., etc.?
For one-on-one coaching, you can go to thrivewithleo.com to work with myself. I started my podcast because I've called the suicide prevention number twice in my life. Wow. And I've lost some people close to me to suicide. So it resonates on different levels. And I got into coaching. I have a master's in counseling psychology. So I used to counsel people, but coaching gives me more flexibility and more adaptability in terms of working with different people in different contexts. Yeah. And so, yeah, I've been doing that, via Skype and telephone and using these different modalities here. And then you can go to leoflowers.com, which will link to my social media, my Instagram, my YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So thrivewithleo.com for coaching, and then leoflowers.com for comedy and all other things.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any projects you're working on at the moment that people can look forward to, or just anything you're working on?
So we're with the podcast, like I said, the title is called Before You Kill Yourself. And what we're eventually going to do is turn that into a book. So all the best nuggets from the podcast will be put in book form. And then hopefully I'm trying to figure out a way to, do a book tour and public speaking and things like that. We'll see how this quarantine lifts and affects things. And yeah. I've also started a online men's group called Anda. And so we're in the beta phase right now to test out how to scale it. But you can always reach out to me through any of the social media means and to find out more about Anda. But it's just a men's group where men get together and just, talk as brothers do.
Awesome. So thank you very much for your time. And all those who are listening, I recommend checking out the Before You Kill Yourself podcast. The great thing I like about that is you're not just speaking to one type of person. You speak to a whole range of people, white, Black, Hispanic, etc., many of whom are very knowledgeable in their field. So you speak to a few psychologists and researchers. So I thoroughly recommend anyone to listen to the podcast, regardless of where you come from or whatnot. And I just want to make it clear with this podcast, although I guess the Black experience of mental health is the focal point, it's really meant to help everyone. There's definitely transferable things that everyone can benefit from. Mental health affects, everyone has mental health, and we all have our own mental health issues, regardless of where we come from, regardless of where we live in. And the more we can see commonalities between each other, the better we can equip ourselves with dealing with our mental health and helping others open up about it. So yeah, once again, thank you guys for listening, and I'm going to end the recording. Please. Oh, did I say please? Peace.